The National League North monthly recap for September. Let's get into it. So going into September, this is how the table looked after 6 games. Scunthorpe top on 13 points, followed by Curzon Ashton and Spennymoor. At the bottom of the table, Gloucester, Darlington, Rushall Olympic and Southport all sat in the relegation zone. So starting with Matchday 7, after 6 games, Southport found themselves rock bottom of the table with only 1 point to their name. They finished last season on a dreadful run of 8 straight losses and finished only 1 point above the relegation zone. That awful run of form had carried over into this season, but on the 29th of August, in came ex-Morecambe, Fylde and Rochdale manager Jim Bentley to try and turn things around. His first game was away to 17th place Hereford, and Bentley had an instant impact. A 57th minute header from Marcus Carver put Southport 1-0 up, then a far more organised and resilient looking Southport managed to survive the late Hereford onslaught to hang on for their first National League North win in 14 games. Also at the bottom of the table, Rushall Olympic made history by getting their first ever victory in the National League North. Some excellent work down the left from Danny Waldron, who I've been really impressed with so far. He's strong, physical, never stops running and is a real handful to defend against, and he put it on a plate for Sam Manton to beat Peterborough Sports 1-0. With both Southport and Rushall winning, 22nd place Darlington needed to get a result away at Buxton. Darlington started the season with 3 consecutive losses, but results and performances picked up as they came into the Buxton game unbeaten in 3 with a draw, a win and a draw. But it was back to reality for Darlow as the steady improvement that they had shown in the past 3 games just seemed to disappear. Buxton put 5 past them with a fantastic attacking display. Darlington couldn't cope with the front 3, particularly Sam Osborne, who scored a hat-trick. But for as good as Buxton were, Darlington were a shambles defensively, and when you look at the goalkeeper and a backline of Taylor, Griffiths, Lees, Lawler and Musto, these are all proven experienced National League North players, so to be conceding chances and goals at the rate they are is alarming, and there's a lot for Darlington fans to worry about at this point. Scunthorpe came into Matchday 7 top of the table, but were instantly up against it away at Alfreton. As just 6 minutes into the match, Kean Scales was given a straight red for this tackle on Dwayne Wiley. The game ended up finishing 2-2, which put Scunthorpe down to second, but considering they played the full game with 10 men, a point on the road is definitely not a bad result. As for the team that took the top spot, that was Brackley Town, beating Warrington 2-0. 2 goals from Danny Newton, both set up from Ricardo Calder's crosses, meant that they leapt from 4th up to 1st. Second place Curzon Ashton suffered their first defeat of the season at home to Tamworth. A brilliant header from Jordan Killine-Liburd in the 60th minute was enough to ensure all 3 points. So at the end of Matchday 7, this is how the table looked, with Brackley Town taking top spot, followed by Scunthorpe and South Shields. There's not much change in the bottom as Southport stay bottom, but Rushall leapfrogged Darlington into 22nd with their win. Matchday 8 was just 3 days later with a round of midweek fixtures, and we'll start at the top of the table with Brackley Town, who travelled away to 17th place Kings Lynn. It's been a disappointing start to the season for Kings Lynn after finishing second last year, but 51 minutes in they actually took a 2-0 lead thanks to goals from Fataggio and Sabulski. Brackley pulled a goal back through Jordan Crawford, then they laid siege to the Kings Lynn goal, and Brackley played some really nice fluent football and had so many chances in the last half an hour. Then in the 95th minute, Brackley finally got the equaliser they deserved, Jimmy Armson turning the ball in for a very hard fought point. It was real backs to the wall stuff for Kings Lynn, and they couldn't quite hang on, and the game finished 2-2. With Brackley drawing, it was a chance for both Scunthorpe and South Shields to take advantage and go to top of the league as second came up against third, and it was Scunthorpe who got off to a flying start with a goal from Kean Scales 7 minutes in. On the 18th minute, Danny Elliott made it 2-0, but at this point it really could have been more as Scunthorpe missed a lot of good chances in the first half, but South Shields got their goal back in the 35th minute through an own goal, and from then on put Scunny under a lot of pressure in the second half and probably should have come away with a point, but in the 85th minute, Danny Whitehall put the game to bed via a penalty to make it 3-1, and even though Scunthorpe weren't great in the second half, they dug in and beat one of the best sides in the division to go back top of the league. Now the game of the night went to Warrington and Spennymoor. The Moors went 3-1 up thanks to a Daniel Greenfield goal in the 47th minute, but a spirited Warrington comeback saw them snatch a late equaliser in the 95th minute to draw the game 3-3. But this was one of those games where it could have been 7-7 if it wasn't for both keepers making some superb saves and both sides hitting the woodwork, and it was a real thriller of a game, and for Warrington to come back from 3-1 down will give them a real boost in their hopes for surviving. Jim Bentley continued to work his magic in his second game in charge as Southport won once again, a 3-1 victory at home to Scarborough to make it 2 wins in a row, and it's hard to believe it's the same players that started the season so poorly, but Bentley has got them well organised, he's got them playing with intensity, not giving Scarborough a second on the ball, and he has to be given a massive amount of credit for this turnaround. After Rushall Olympic getting their first win of the season last match day, they then followed that up with a massive 4-1 victory away at Bishop Stortford. Bishop Stortford actually took the lead in this game, but it was all downhill from there, and the concern for them has to be the lack of goals and clear-cut chances. When Ola Ogunwame came on, he did provide a bit of a boost with his directness and willingness to run at players, but other than that, the striker Tom Derry was given very little as far as service goes, and that result puts Bishop Stortford into the relegation zone. Elsewhere, Darlington and Buxton played out a 0-0 draw, which after Southport and Rushall both winning left Darlow sat bottom of the table. The positive was that after having the worst defence in the league so far, a clean sheet was a step in the right direction from losing 5-0, but a lack of clear-cut chances and very little threat or quality up front meant that Darlow never looked like scoring, and this performance was clearly the last straw for the Darlington board, who then sacked Alan Armstrong the morning after the game. As for Buxton, it's been a decent start to the season, sitting in 7th, but defeat to Bishop Stortford and the draw against Darlington, who both sit in the relegation zone, meant that the season could have been looking a lot better had they not dropped points against sides who they should be beating. So after Matchday 8, Scunthorpe's win puts them back on top, followed closely by Tamworth, Brackley and Blythe Spartans. As for the bottom of the table, Rushall's second win in a row has taken them all the way up into 18th, and Southport's second win in a row takes them off the bottom of the table to be replaced by Darlington. For Matchday 9, we'll start with the chaos that was Scunthorpe versus Buxton. In the 96th minute, Buxton were beating Scunthorpe 2-1, and as you can see from this Buxton fan footage, it was absolutely pouring down with rain on what was the hottest day of the year, with temperatures at 32 degrees Celsius. But in the 96th minute, the ref blew the whistle, which people assume was full time, but in fact he'd actually abandoned the game. So the game was called off in the 96th minute with Buxton winning 2-1. There was 10 minutes of added time, so there was about 4 or 5 minutes of the game left to play. A lot of people thought that Buxton were just going to be awarded the points, but the National League came out with a statement the day after saying that the game will be replayed in full starting at 0-0. Chester were second favourites to win the league at most bookmakers before the season started, but they found themselves already needing to get back on track after a poor start to the season has seen them in 16th place, and they came up against a Blythe team who've started the season brilliantly in 4th after narrowly avoiding relegation last season, and Chester could have so easily lost this game when Blythe missed this free volley with just 5 minutes to go, but as it was, Chester got the chance to win the game with a penalty, and Whitehouse coolly slots it away to get the 2-1 win in a much improved Chester performance. On to Alfreton, who got a huge 4-0 win at home to Buxton. Buxton tried to play some pretty football, they moved the ball around, but they had no real cutting edge up front, especially with no Kelsey Mooney, who missed the game due to injury. Buxton were pretty much restricted to just taking a lot of pop shots from distance, and Alfreton were physical, they bullied Buxton off the ball, and they were clinical when they got the chances and deserved the win. That win moves them up into 8th, around the playoff mix where they'd hoped to be, so that's a very promising result for Alfreton. On to Banbury United, who put in their best performance for a long while against Warrington. Goals have been very hard to come by for Banbury so far this season, but they found themselves 2-0 up inside the first 15 minutes, thanks to goals from Ken Charles and Adrian Wheeler. It's been a concerning start to the season for Banbury. They conceded 3 at Scarborough, 3 against Spennymoor, 3 against Buxton and 4 against South Shields, but this result gives them a bit more hope, and it's a win that brings them away from the relegation zone and up into 15th. As for Warrington, that's 4 losses in the last 5 games, and after a decent start to the season, they now find themselves sliding down the table. We started off this episode talking about Southport's 14-game winless run, but now Southport just can't stop winning. A 4-1 victory away at Kings Lynn, which makes it 3 wins out of 3 for Jim Bentley. Southport were 4-0 up at half-time, which included a wonderful Marcus Carver hat-trick. The funny thing is that Kings Lynn actually started this game really well and could have been 2-0 up inside the first 10 minutes when when they hit the post and Renshaw making a brilliant save. But from then on, Southport picked Kings Lynn apart, and it's a win that takes them up into 19th in the table and puts Kings Lynn into the relegation zone. It was a big game at the bottom of the table as still managerless Darlington travelled away to 21st place Bishop Stortford, and it was Bishop Stortford that took the lead in the 28th minute. After a chaotic scramble, Darren Foxley squeezed his shot into the near post, and for the rest of the game Darlington dominated possession but struggled to turn that possession into chances as the game finished 1-0. After matchday 9, it's very tight at the top of the table as Tamworth go back top with Scunthorpe's game abandoned. At the bottom of the table, both Southport and Bishop Stortford climb out of the relegation zone and are replaced by Peterborough Sports and Kings Lynn. So for matchday 10, we'll start with Buxton versus Spennymoor, as the day before the game it was announced that Spennymoor manager Jamie Chandler decided to resign. The reason for that is that he has a full-time job outside of managing Spennymoor and his wife is having a baby soon, so he's found it difficult to juggle the football with his full-time job and also family life, which is a shame because Spennymoor have gotten off to a great start this season, but family comes first, and the assistant manager Lewis Dickman is the interim manager for now, and he got off to a brilliant start, beating Buxton 2-0 to take them into third place. Now on to Warrington against Kings Lynn, which resulted in another managerial departure after the game, but first we have to start with Warrington and talk about the signing of ex-Liverpool and Derby County player Andre Wisdom, an unbelievable signing for National League North level. Back in 2020 he was stabbed and robbed by a gang in Liverpool, which has really affected his career and he's struggled since, but hopefully he can get back on track at Warrington, and from their perspective Wisdom is mostly a full back but he can also play centre back, and I imagine that's where he'll play to replace Evan Gums, who's been out with a hernia, and Warrington have really missed his presence in the back line. But onto the game, Warrington won 1-0 thanks to a goal from Ricketts, which takes them 5 points away from the relegation zone. And as for Kings Lynn, 2 days after this game, manager Mark Hughes was sacked with them sitting third from bottom with only one win. I know they've lost some key players from last season and also manager Tommy Widrington, who went to Aldershot, but Kings Lynn were pretty quick to announce their new manager, and they've managed to get Adam Lakeland from Curzon Ashton. He has left Curzon, who are currently sat in the playoffs, to join Kings Lynn. Quite a left field appointment that I didn't see coming, but he's done a decent job at Curzon, and with Kings Lynn being full time I can see how that enticed him away, but this looks like it could be a good appointment, and we'll have to see if he can turn things around for Kings Lynn. On to Peterborough Sports versus South Shields, where South Shields were still looking for their first away win of the season. They've started life in the National League North very well since promotion, sitting third on 17 points, but 15 of those points have come at home and only 2 away. And that first away win wasn't looking promising when Peterborough Sports took the lead through Mark Jones, but South Shields fought their way back into the game and went 3-1 up. A penalty for Peterborough in the 93rd minute had things looking very nervy, but Courtney Clark scored a wonderful goal to secure all 3 points and get their first away win of the season. And if they can fix their away form and start turning those draws into wins, they'd be comfortably top of the table by now. As for Peterborough Sports, it's only 2 wins in the last 16 league games, but they played well in that first half and showed a lot more attacking intent than they had in previous games, which is promising, but South Shields were too good for them in the second half. On to Darlington versus Gloucester, 23rd versus 24th. Gloucester City came into this game without a manager as their 3-0 defeat to AFC Totton in the FA Cup second qualifying round last weekend. Tim Flowers was sacked after the match, so they are now on the hunt for a new manager. Whereas for Darlington, they've just appointed a new manager in Josh Gowling. He spent 3 years at Hereford and this is his first game in charge. And it started well for Gloucester as in the 34th minute Brandon Smalley scored his 4th of the season to put Gloucester 1-0 up. Then in the 72nd minute Darlington were given a penalty and Hatfield just about scores his pen, and that's how the game finished. And unfortunately for Darlington, the problems that they've had all season still persisted throughout this game. Lots of aimless possession, constantly sideways, backwards passing, no real threat going forward. They still look shaky at the back. Finlay Barnes, who is the only attacking player that Darlington have had who's looked any good, has gone back to York. And I know the new man has only had 4 days with the squad, so I don't want to judge too quickly, but I am worried for Darlington and hopefully Josh Gowling can turn them around. Gloucester, on the other hand, weren't much better. They shaded the first half, then second half sat deep, tried to protect the 1-0 lead, but it's a point away from home and their search for a new manager continues. So at the end of matchday 10, this is how the table looked, and it's so tight at the top with Tamworth, South Shields and Spennymoor all level on points. Scunthorpe in 4th and Alfreton, Buxton and Curzon make up the rest of the playoff teams. Darlington sit bottom of the league still, with Peterborough Sports, Kings Lynn and Gloucester all in the relegation zone. For this weekend we only had one National League North match, as most teams were playing in the FA Cup, but the rearranged Scunthorpe versus Buxton game took place, and before I get into the game I want to focus on the off-field matters for Scunthorpe, because it's looking likely that Scunthorpe might not even finish out the season. Scunthorpe have been struggling financially for years. The current owner David Hilton put out a statement saying he's looking for a way out and he's no longer providing funding for the club. This means that players and staff won't be getting paid since Hilton isn't spending any more money on Scunthorpe. They're looking for potential investors to save the club, but nobody wants to buy them with the mess that they are in currently. It was also mentioned in the statement that they have to leave their ground, so their final home game at Glanford Park will be against Brackley on October the 7th. And from then on, Scunthorpe will play their home games at Gainsborough Trinity Stadium. However, Gainsborough came out and said that they've not been informed of these plans. Well, then they later clarified that whilst there is an agreement in place for both clubs to play fixtures at Gainsborough, it requires approval from the Safety Advisory Group. Fans have also been given banning orders for criticising the ownership of the club, most notably Matt Ellis, who runs the Scunthorpe Iron Brew podcast, and things are just looking so bleak at the moment. A GoFundMe has been set up to support the staff of Scunthorpe, which at the time of this recording is at almost 65,000, but I really hope that they can get out of this mess somehow so we don't lose another club with a proud EFL history. And as for the actual Scunthorpe versus Buxton game, there hasn't been any highlights of the game posted at this time of this recording, but the game finished 3-0 to Buxton. Buxton will feel like justice is served after winning 2-1 when the original fixture got abandoned with 5 minutes to go. There was a pitch invasion from a group of Scunthorpe fans which was quickly dispersed, but Scunthorpe had made a good start to the season, and maybe this is a sign of the off-the-field issues starting to affect what's happening on the pitch. But who knows. As for the final table at the end of September, Scunthorpe could have gone top with a win, but they stay in 4th. Buxton's win puts them up into 10th, and it's all very tight at the moment. There's only 3 points separating Hereford in 16th and Curzon in 7th, so a couple of wins for these sides in the bottom half will see them in a playoff position.